Hey everyone, thanks for checking out this episode of It Tastes Different Game Reviews. I want you to like and subscribe this review, because if not, we're going to send the monsters after you. What's on the menu? In this episode, we're headed to the tea shop to check out and eat the Bunny Dongo with Monster Hunter Rise. Monster Hunter Rise is another episode in the series of Monster Hunter. This one is developed and published by Capcom. It came out on the Nintendo Switch on March 26th, 2021. It is slated for PC next year. Looks like first or second quarter of next year. It is slated for PC release. This is another series, another game in the series of the Monster Hunter series franchise. And we're going to just check out and see with the other guys what they think of this version of Monster Hunter. So, without further ado, let's head on to the first person. Patrick, what did you think of Monster Hunter Rise?
Well, I'll just kind of settle on up to the tea shop myself and have some Bunny Dongo myself. It was, I like it. I like the Monster Hunter world, the changes and everything brought in by Monster Hunter World, and they adopted a lot of the same features and functions with some newer items too, that we'll get into. But overall, I'm thoroughly enjoying Monster Hunter Rise. It's, I struggled with it at first, but it's just because I don't play my Switch very often and I have trouble with the Switch controller. Then, because I'm used to playing on an Xbox or a PlayStation controller, and Nintendo decided they were just going to move around, what's considered the back or cancel button versus the action button than what Microsoft and Sony do. So, outside of that, I thoroughly enjoyed the game, and I look forward to playing more, especially the co-op portion of it. I enjoy co-op in this game a lot. Russ, what'd you think, man?
This is a great series. Probably one of my more favorite Capcom series. This one here, like everybody else, and like Patrick said, and probably the rest behind me will say, the buttons. Getting used to the Nintendo way of life is always difficult when we've played so much Xbox and so much PS5 or PS4. We have never played the PS5. And so, that was kind of frustrating. But, me, I always go for the most difficult thing in a game. And I was able to pick up the combos pretty quickly with this one versus World. I'll wait to release that information here as we talk about what we chose and stuff like that. I'll give you a very generic overview. I enjoyed it thoroughly. I'm going to continue to play it. I did not quite get as far as the rest of the team did, but it is a lot of fun. Who doesn't like having cats and dogs and owls and it's a well put together game. It's a lot different than some other games in the sense of like locking on targets. But anyway, we'll talk about that a little bit later. First impressions, I really enjoyed this game quite a bit. Shane, what about you, man? What do you think?
I loved it until my Switch died. I'm hoping I can fix it. Besides the Switch taking a dump, I love the game. Love the series overall. I mean, it's a fantastic series, and what they've done with the Switch is really remarkable in my opinion. But just like everybody has said, and Nick will probably finish off with, the controls take a bit to get used to. If you typically only play a PC or Xbox, PlayStation, and it's interesting how they've done that much on the Switch. They've created that open world with really overall decent graphics. The biggest problem with the Switch version is it's a Switch. You have to use the Pro controller or even a knockoff controller. The little Joy-Cons are just too tiny in my opinion. But the game itself, it's really remarkable how it came to fruition.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, you need the Pro Controller. I don't know how anybody could play this with the Joy-Cons. I don't know how I would have been able to play with the Joy-Cons because I didn't even give it a shot. I bought a Pro Controller just for this game because I had the regular Joy-Con. So definitely I don't know how anybody would play with the Joy-Con. Shane, Russ, did you guys play with the Joy-Cons?
New. My Joy-Cons got so much drift. They're in Tokyo right now.
Tokyo drift.
It was terrible. Now, Russ, you got a new really kick-ass Switch controller? Pardon my language. Did you use the Joy-Cons at all before picking it up?
No, not even remotely. Patrick said, don't even. I mean, we were anticipating this game for a review, and for those listeners that don't know, I don't own a Switch, so I borrow the daughter's. Just because there's only about, maybe 3 games in this whole world that I would ever even remotely play on it. Anyway, so that being said, I was like, you know what? If it's that bad, I'm just going to go ahead and buy it. I'll give it to my daughter. And I got a little Pokemon Pro controller for it. And then, of course, it's not mine now. It will probably be hers, but it's the same rate. I mean, I could not imagine ever playing this game on Joy-Cons. I mean, the last game we played was that Ghosts and Goblins. Even on that controller was really tough on the Joy controller. It was just the Joy-Con, whatever. That's the only way to go. Huge thing to all of our listeners. If you do play this game, it's an absolute must that you have an actual pro style controller.
Yeah, I would definitely agree. Nintendo always does what Nintendo does. Nintendo always got to be different in some little way, and that's a hindrance in some ways for them. And they've got to be careful with that. The controller, the setup for the Joy-Cons, isn't bad if you're playing mobile. You're playing directly on the Switch. That's fine to a point. But there's games like this that it's rough to play something like that. I played Mario Odyssey all the way through with the Joy-Cons, but I slid them into the little controller holder, which made it a lot more palatable. I can't play on the handheld version. Can't do it. It's just, I need a big TV because I'm blind and old, and it's a lot nicer that way. But now I have to go get a new Pro controller if I get my Switch fixed because I want Russ's.
Right, yeah, I was going to say I'm super jealous of that. Russ got that Pokemon Neon Pikachu one, and I'm like, that thing looks amazing. I want it so bad.
The coloring on that thing is just so tight.
It is, man. It looks awesome, and I wish I would have saw that because I really wanted it after I saw it. I'm like, man, too bad my other controller I've had for a little over a month, or else I might go see if I could swap it out.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if I end up getting that 4K Switch, if I end up breaking down and getting that, then I'll definitely be stealing that controller back. Sorry, Isabella. You'll just have to deal with it.
Yeah, it's definitely a pretty sweet looking controller. If you've not seen it yet, you need to go check out I think it's called Pikachu Neon or whatever is what it's called. And it's got some pretty cool color schemes to it. And they're not calling it the Pro controller anymore. I think they're calling it it's the
enhanced.
Yeah, enhanced.
I think it's like the enhanced one or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, it looks just like a Pro controller. It's just got cool neon Pikachu colors. So if you've not seen it or played with it, it's definitely one of those to check out. Definitely, I don't know how anybody can play with a Joy-Con in a game like this. There's too much using like ZL and the Z buttons and stuff like that to have to try to use a regular controller.
And man hands are really hard to do that. I've got decent sized hands, and it just doesn't work for me.
Yeah.
My kids do it just fine.
Yeah, I have a big problem where I think I manhandle the controller too much. So I don't know if I could play with the Joy-Cons because I'd probably just wreck them because I'm a little bit too forceful with my controllers, and the Pro controller just feels like super sturdy compared to like holding the Joy-Cons. Even because I can't play with my Switch undocked. My Switch is always docked, and I use that controller snap-on that you were talking about, Shane. It kind of feels really close to a PlayStation/Xbox controller. It's tilted at just an angle, but I still feel like I'm too rough with those controllers. They're just too flimsy. The Joy-Cons are really flimsy feeling.
Thanks for listening to our Joy-Con /Pro controller episode here. But I mean, everything we're saying is a definite impact on a game like this. Monster Hunter World is truly, in my opinion, meant to be played with the Pro controller, or even a knockoff of the Pro controller, because the Joy-Cons it's too cumbersome to be playing this type of game. But one thing I want to give Nintendo and Monster Hunter Rise is I was very surprised how well it ran online. Um, I never played online with the Switch before. My daughter has, um, but I'd never done it, and I was pleasantly surprised. I mean, there was no connection issues when I was on with you guys. Um, Everything ran fluid. Everything I have is hardwired except for the Switch, and it ran really well. Um, did Now, Pat? You and Nick jumped online first. Did you guys have any connection issues at all that me or Russ never
Oh
experienced?
no, the only hard part about it was figuring out how to join together. In all honesty, that was just the hardest part. And once we figured out that you could just give a lobby ID to your friend and they could just pop right in, we had zero, I will say zero network connectivity issues. We never got disconnected from each other. We never got, it never kicked us out of the party together. And we played a lot together. We were the two idiots that made it just past the very first part where we made it to town, and we decided we're just going to group up and play the game together. So we were those two idiots trying to figure out how to play the game without going through the basic storyline quests of the village, because we were like, hey, we just want to play together. And we were cursing the game's name in the beginning. And then I think we played 5-6 hours of that. And then the next day, Nick's like, we should have played the story, because I played the village quest and it explained everything we were struggling with. So we were just in a hurry, but the network connectivity stuff, zero issues. It was like seamless and smooth, and it played like it had been beta tested and properly tested and vetted out like no other. So no issues at all.
Well, they had a leg up with World and stuff like that, so they probably had a lot of those kinks worked out, and it was very good on Nintendo. I mean, I played with you guys one night and gave it another shot another night, and so it worked out quite well for me. I mean, even on those that I joined a random lobby and ran one quest with them, and it was really pretty seamless, pretty easy. I mean, it wasn't even that difficult at all. So what kind of weapons did you guys choose? Shane, what did you choose?
What's that, Shane? What did you choose? What weapon did you choose? Well, while Shane's figuring out what weapon he chose, you know.
Sorry, I left myself muted. I didn't want to be rude. The insect glaive. That's what I ran with on Monster Hunter World. I love it. It allows me to basically bounce all over the screen, which helped me get onto the monsters' backs and ride them out and everything. The problem with that was, though, with the new setup of mounting the monster, that sounds terrible, is the fact that now there's a new mechanic that you go through to ride the monsters to get up on their back, and it really makes the insect glaive almost a pointless weapon. In my opinion, I mean, you still get the mobility that the insect glaive provided you, but my primary use for that thing was jumping on backs. And now with the new mechanic, it's pretty much obsolete to use. I can use any other weapon and get on the monster just as easy. So, but I also liked the way the insect glaive gave me my mobility around the map and stuff, so I kept it. What about you, Pat? Did you stick with tried and true hammer, or?
Yes, I did.
I can't remember what you were swinging.
I did. I stayed with the hammer. I was going to say the insect glaive now just allows you to dodge the monster a lot more easily. I mean, it was always that. It was very high mobility, so you can dodge and evade the monster's tails and claws and stuff like that. But yes, I did. I went with the hammer because I was tried and true and familiar because it's a world. I will say that I got frustrated with the hammer in the very beginning because I didn't play the tutorial. Like I said, me and Nick hopped into the world, and I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to stick with the hammer. And I got the hammer, and 5 or 6 hours, and 5 hours into it, I was so mad at playing with the hammer. I was so frustrated. And then I went and tried out all the other weapons, and I'm like, you know what? I still like the hammer better than everything else, so I stuck with it. And then once I got into and played the actual village quests, which are the tutorial ones, I was like, holy crap, I was missing so much stuff and making this so much harder on myself because I was so used to Monster Hunter World tactics and the ways things moved that I was missing huge swaths of how the game actually played. And I was so frustrated with the game at that first 6 hours of gameplay, like I said, because I was the thick-skulled guy who just rushed into it and played and played the multiplayer with my buddy instead of going through the tutorials in the single player portion. So, uh, so Russ, what weapon did you start with or stick with?
Mine was also a stick with. I like to make sure that I make it as difficult as possible for myself in a game like this. And I picked probably the most difficult weapon, at least for most people. And I did the charge blade again. The charge blade is a very difficult weapon, but it hits like a truck when you connect, and it's just really a blast. I mean, luckily, I was smart enough to kind of go through the tutorial first, so I did understand some of the. They actually kind of dumbed it down a little bit, not completely, but just enough, because the charges almost kind of build automatically, whereas within World you were building them up through your shield and your board and sword, and then you were releasing it once you get your charge. So you could actually switch to your charge weapon quite a bit easier. And it was quite a bit easier with Rise, but of course, again, you are flailing about. It's like, what is it, Michael Literally, whatever his name is, Lord of Flies, like his legs flail independent of his body. That's kind of what it is like using this weapon. Is you just kind of get up in there and you go to town and you just start swinging. Mobility is low with this weapon, so I try my best to stay out of it, but sometimes you have a charge and you're just like, if I can hit him just one more time, I'm about to hit him for like 75, like especially on the starter weapon. That's a pretty good hit if you get him in the right way. So in any case, it was good stuff. So Nick, what about you, man?
So yeah, Nick, what about you? First thoughts, and what weapon did you decide to play? And was it your old weapon, or did you pick something new?
Yeah, this this version of Monster Hunter is really good. It seems more accessible than Monster Hunter World or some of the older Monster Hunters. But I really enjoy it. I'm having a lot of fun playing it. It's a great Monster Hunter game. If anyone's listening and they're familiar with Monster Hunter, um, this would be probably the most accessible version of that game. But if you're not familiar with the franchise, you're basically hunting monsters for gear and for their skins and stuff, and then crafting gear and new weapons out of it. So, but I like the new additions between Monster Hunter World was their first console type release. The game has always been handheld, practically a type of release on a DS and 3DS and stuff like that. And this is, Monster Hunter World was their first like console release of the game, and then Monster Hunter Rise, of course, is another console release. So they have had other games that have been console releases, but they've been ports of the handheld version to the console. This is the actually made for console release of the game. So I really enjoyed it a lot. For as far as what I decided to choose is I went with the longsword, which is what I had in Monster Hunter World, so I didn't change it up. I just went with what I knew. Um, I've tried some of the other weapons out, and I just really like the longsword. The longsword is, it's very attack heavy, high DPS. You're really just doing a lot of damage per second, and it has a lot of sheathing abilities. So, with that particular weapon, a lot of your move sets have you sheathe the weapon after you've done them. So for that particular set, you kind of work on, you want to put skills and points towards being able to sheath and unsheath the weapon quickly, because a lot of your move sets are going to have you sheath the weapon, and then you want to be able to bring it out quicker, as well as sharpening, because a lot of our weapons in the longsword, some of them have greater sharpness, and we might go into the sharpness levels and stuff like that. But there's a lot of information for this game, but the sharpness can be drilled down pretty quickly. So you want quick sharpening, because high sharpening with longsword means its output is high. So you want to keep it sharpened and really sharp as you fight these monsters. You want to get it dull, because dull allows you to deflect a lot of, the monster is allowed to deflect a lot of the hits you do. But if you have it sharpened, you can pretty much pierce through anything. So Um, that's kind of yeah. So that's what I went with, and I enjoy the longsword. I have a lot of fun with that one. That one's kind of a starter, like all around weapon, but it's if you really know how to use it and its abilities, you can do a lot of damage, and it's a lot of fun to play with. So, but
Cool.
ultimately, I think all the weapons have their own place in the Monster Hunter world.
Yep. Sounds like we all
Yeah,
stuck with
and
our
there's
original weapons.
yeah, and there's so many weapons in this thing. It was really hard not to try something new. I did start with the longsword, um, but it just to me it felt too cumbersome because of the way I play World. So I went back to the insect glaive, and happy I did. But yeah, there's a lot of weapons in here to play with and figure out, and maybe if I get my dang switch fixed, I'm gonna try another weapon out, give it a little more time, because I like more of a speed thing. I'll take 50 hits to one as long as I'm getting the same damage. It feels like I'm doing more, but. I like the weapon sets in this game. Is there anything that you want to see brought from World to Rise and Rise to World on the next iteration?
For me, so some of the things I liked in World. So in World, they had environmental traps. So like you could knock over a tree and trap the monster in the vines, and or you could knock down a rock column and drop it on the monster's head and stuff. And Rise doesn't have that, so I wish they did. Some of the things I like about Rise though is um, I do like the ability. So in Rise, you can ride the monsters, and I do really like that ability. I like to be able to ride and fight other monsters while you're on top of the monsters. You can basically do the wire bug ability. So wire bugs are basically Rise had or World had kind of this concept where they had the what was it, like the hook shot or something like that, or
Yeah.
something similar to that. And so Rise has this thing called the wire bugs, basically where in World the hook shot can only be used in certain scenarios, whereas the wire bugs can be pretty much used wherever you want to go. So they can be used to get higher up in high on terrain or to whatever. So as you fight the monsters with the wire bugs, you do this ability where you're doing a wire bug move, and then you can tie the monster up in these wire bugs, and it's basically just wires if you think of it like a spider silk or something like that. And basically it ties the monster up where you can ride it, you can jump on top of it, ride it, and you can attack other monsters with it. You can also, if there's no monsters around, you can slam the monster into a wall repeatedly and do a lot of damage to the monster. And I love the wire bugs. I think that was the best portion of this game. I wish World had the wire bugs, because wire bugs are like, you can just do whatever you want with them, right? You can just shoot them out. They do have a cooldown, but it's not a very long cooldown. Once you have it, you have these cool abilities you can do with it, and you can basically traverse anywhere you want to, just shooting out these wire bugs and going wherever you want to go. So I wish World had that. So I guess for me it would be, I wish World had the wire bugs, and I wish Rise had the environmental destruction stuff that they had in World.
Right. And yeah, and as you're talking about, it's the silk bind abilities. Every weapon has what they call silk bind ability. And and yeah, that's one of the interesting things. I like the silk the change there, but also it kind of takes away from something too, because as Shane mentioned earlier, it kind of negates his class a little bit, because he was the high flying acrobatic character that could get on top of the monster very easily and beat the crap out of it in World. Whereas in Rise, there is no more of that. You're not mounting the monster unless he enters a down state after you hit him with enough of the silk bind attacks. So as you attack, you do these silk bind attacks using the wire bugs, and after you do enough of them and the monster goes in a down state, he can be mounted. And when you mount, you're not actually attacking the monster when you mount him now in Rise. You're actually riding him to fight other monsters, or as Nick said, smash him into the wall a whole bunch of times so he takes some damage. And then we found like one world, like a damage ability, but you had to be riding the dinosaur, but we could never find another one. I think Nick, you ran one of the dinosaurs or one of the creatures into a pillar of molten magma, and it came crashing down on him. But we couldn't find
Right.
any more. We tried. Um, I don't know what to think. I mean, I do like the riding ability, but I also kind of miss the ability where you can mount the monster at random by jumping off a cliff and landing on its head, or as Shane would do, his high wire, but his wire is insects and jump all over them. I don't know. I kind of miss that to some extent, but I think the riding is a lot more fun because when Nick and I was fighting Magnum Hollow, it seemed like every time he would run away there for a while, he'd run into another monster, and we just beat the crap, use the soak bind on the other monster, get on the other monster, and beat the crap out of Magnum Hollow a few times, and that kept happening. So it made it easier to defeat the monster, I think, in some extent. And for all in honesty, I feel that Rise is much easier than World. So, it felt that I could, and maybe it's because it was on the Switch. I don't know if you guys felt the same way, but maybe it's because it was the Switch. Russ, what'd you think, man? Was there something that you missed or something that you thought they should have brought over?
Well, I don't know that there's anything that was missed or anything. Like, I feel like everything was kind of put in there purposely between the two. I think the open world, like the lack of open world kind of in Rise. I mean, not that it's not an open world, but it does seem kind of linear in a sense compared to World. World had a couple of different maps at least or something like that. Like in the environmental stuff that Nick was talking about. I mean, Nick really hit it on the head, the nail on the head for me in that, it was kind of lacking some of those environmental things that were in World that I really enjoyed. But for the most part, it did. I mean, maybe I don't want to say dumbing down of the game because I don't like that, because this is the same version, but it's a different version. Maybe the simplification of some of the things in Rise were actually refreshing compared to World, but then there's a few things in World when it comes to the environment and to the massiveness of the map and differences in some of the monsters anyway that we liked. I mean, like some of the water creatures and stuff like that. Like I don't know, just the way they were a little bit different in both those games. Maybe something that maybe I'd look at changing, but I do respect the fact that they're kind of two similarly different games, if that even makes sense.
Yeah, I mean the whole wire bug change was pretty awesome, in my opinion. At first, I was annoyed as crap when I got in this game. Like I was telling everybody earlier that I was so mad because I couldn't figure out how to do all the move sets that I was used to doing with the hammer in World, and then I found out that the majority of them had just been moved to the silk bind, and then the switch hits. I'm like, God, there's that ability, and that made things easier because one of the things I used to love about the hammer is that you could charge it up and you could come sliding down a hill like a freaking rock and just unleash it. And he swings around and does this basically like a giant waterfall boulder attack. And I was like, I can't do that in Rise. I can't do it. And in Rise, you can do it. They just change the steepness of the hill that you have to start on, but with your silk bind attacks, they basically added the spinning bludgeon as one of the silk binds, so I could just charge that sucker up in an arc and let go and just at any time. So then I was like back in love with my hammer weapon. So what about you, Shane? What was that, Russ?
I was going to ask a question, like, because it kind of goes off what you were saying, was the one thing I was unable to do. And I don't know if you and Nick were able to do it because you guys did play, probably twice as much as myself and Shane got to. But did we ever sever a tail or anything like that? Did you guys ever sever a tail?
Yep.
Okay. That was one of I never got an opportunity to do that. I got into the larger monsters, and I would just try to do that because that was one of my favorite things about World, was seeing which one it was, whether it was me or whether it was Nick that actually got the tail sliced off the monster, because we would be back there just going to town. Of course, I'd be launching Nick everywhere too, but but anyway.
Yep. You could still slice off head tails and damage parts so they can no longer use them as weapons or bludgeon them as weapons, and still have stuns. What about you, Shane? Did you feel something was missing or that they should have brought over, or maybe they should bring over for the next one?
I don't know. It's like Russ said, it was they were similar and different. It's the little things like the mounting. I wish they could combine the two with the silk and my typical way of mounting. I don't know. I wish the graphics were better, more like Hunter World. Just because that game is gorgeous for what it is, and it looked really good on Switch. Don't get me wrong, but the gameplay, I think I want my ability to just jump on the back when I do my high flying circus backflips and crap all over the place. That was my favorite thing to do. Wee, boom, land on the back and just beat the crap out of that thing's skull. That's probably my biggest disappointment with the gameplay, but that's just because of my weapon I use. Um, I do like to see. I would like to see a combination of several things for the next iteration. I want to see the ability for everybody to be able to use the silk like you can now, but also be able to do your acrobats to get on in some way. And I'd like to see that silk be more used for the terrain stuff. You know, remember in Rise, I'm sorry, World, you could hook those birds and go from place to place. I kind of like the ideal of using those the silk to swing throughout the place. You know, just consistently, because you only get. I had 3 charges. I could do 3 silks. What I don't know if you guys could, but I would like to see more of a Tarzan effect with that. That seems kind of silly, but to be able to just swing through the jungle and, you know, oh, there's one, and just land right on his back. That to me would be cool. I would like to see them take the one thing that bothered me from both games, beating the crap out of each other. We're playing co-op. You know, interfering with each other's attacks. I don't like that, but you know, it also makes the game a little more strategic too.
Well, yeah, because
You know, if you're down
everybody
here-
knows the head's mine. Stay away from the head.
yeah, you know, and me, I don't care. If you're in the way, I'll cut right through you. I don't have that kind of control. But I would like to see a nice blend of some of these new things for World 2 or Monster Hunter Zero, whatever they want to call it. You know, I would like to see a nice blend of a lot of the things they've done here. But yeah, I think Nick was probably one of my favorite things. That was the destruction. You know, knocking ivy and crap down and tangling them up, or the desert level, we can drop them in the hole or knock the pillars and stuff on them. But I understand Switch still has a lot of limits, but they did a lot for this game on that little handheld. Definitely give them credit there. And they were running the Resident Evil engine too. I don't know if anybody caught that.
Yeah, they were in the RE
But,
engine. And I did find some environmental things, like Patrick said, the magma wall that I ran the one into, and then magma spewed out. And there is a desert level in this one, and I did get one of the monsters trapped in one of the sinkholes. There's a place with sinkholes, and the monster got trapped in that. But
I didn't get to that.
it's not to the extent of World, and I would agree that the environments in World were a lot bigger. I mean, there are some big environments, but I think there was a lot more environments and a lot bigger environments in World. I mean, World was just a huge world, basically, you know, and the gameplay, you know, in the game was a lot longer. This one doesn't seem, story-wise, as long, right? I mean, it's more about just defeating the monsters and getting better equipment and fighting bigger and badder monsters. Whereas World had a continuing story that even went into the expansion, Iceborne. You know, Rise will probably have an expansion or some sort of DLC or something like that, but and hopefully they expand on that city, because one thing is I do like the characters, and I really like the was it Kimono or Kamuna or whatever village. I like all that, you know, and I like the cat and I like the dog that you get in this one. You know, in World you just had the cat, which the cats are pretty much, you know, a part of the whole Monster Hunter thing, where the cats come out and they fight and attack and heal and do all sorts of stuff with you. And in this one you have the dogs, where the dogs you can ride and they also attack. And I like the fact that, you know, unlike in World, where everything you did took a long time, it was a really long animation. So if you were like, you know, sharpening your blade or drinking a potion, it was a really long animation. You couldn't do anything during that animation. Where in this one, I do like the fact that you can cancel out of it, and you can also run. It goes into a slight jog, or when you're trying to drink a potion, or when you're sharpening your blade. If you're riding your dog, you can sharpen as you're riding the dog, and that's really nice. So it gives it more. It gives you a little bit, I guess, like I said, it's a little bit more accessible, right? Because it doesn't, you know, in World, it locked you to that animation. If you were drinking a potion, you could walk around and you were locked to that animation until the animation was done. In Rise, if you're drinking a potion, you can cancel out of it with B by doing a roll halfway through the drink, right? You don't have to follow the entire animation, especially if your health's 100%. You don't have to complete that animation, and you could just roll out of it. Whereas in World, you couldn't. You had to wait till that animation was finished.
Right, yeah. They expanded on a lot of things in this game. I mean, as Nick just touched on the buddies, I do feel, though, that they dumbed the buddies down. Like in the original, in Monster Hunter World, the cats seem to do a lot more. In Rise, it seems like they're kind
Yes.
of lackadaisy and they'll do like one ability every 5 minutes or something. It seems like a long time. Like when we're fighting them and you're like, come on, buddy, where's my healing thing? You know, come on, I'm hurting over here. And he's over there lollygagging around or he's stunned because the majority of the time they seem like they're incapacitated. I do like, as Nick said, that you have cats and dogs now, and when you're playing single player, you can bring 2 buddies along with you. So that's kind of nice. When you're playing multiplayer, you can only bring one of your buddies. We always end up opting for the cat, and which really just kind of sucks because the dog makes traversing the world so much easier with how quick he can move. And as Nick said, there's nothing better than hopping on the dog buddy and sharpening my hammer as I'm chasing after a monster. Yes, I said sharpen my hammer because I have to sharpen my hammer too. So
God, I remember when that happened on World. I'm sharpening a hammer.
I was blunting it up a little bit more, but yeah, I mean, they really
taking up
expanded
steps.
the buddy system, the palicos, and then the dogs. What were the dogs' names? They were the palamutes. There you go, palicos and palamutes. And so, I mean, now you can basically have a harem of them. I think you have like up to 16 or something weird like that, and they're all doing different things. You could send palicos in submarines. You could send palicos on kites. You can train palicos or buddies. You can train buddies on kites, send buddies in submarines, and all kinds of stuff like that. So there's definitely a lot more to the buddy system than there was in the previous in World. There was so much to it; it was just overwhelming at points.
And
it seemed like they increased. Sorry, no, my bad, Nick. But I was just gonna say it seemed like they did increase with Rise. They did increase. And this may be a wrong terminology, but they increased some of the mini games versus what the other one was. I mean, mini games is the best way I can describe it, as they are just side things to do to improve or to expand gameplay a little bit.
Yeah, like you're talking about. Yeah, like you can send your buddies out to go do the submarine to go search for materials. You can send them out on kites to go search the world for materials, and then you can send them to be trained, and then you can have the guys melding stuff in the background. You can do all kinds of stuff like that. And there's a lot more to do, like in between. Villagers have side quests they give you, or collections that they want you to do, and stuff like that. So yeah, there's a lot more side stuff to do, as you said, Russ, than there was in the previous one. But I honestly do feel the combat was much easier in this one, and maybe it is because it was Nintendo and they had in mind that people are going to be using Joy-Cons and not real controllers. I don't know.
I do like in this one that unlike World with your palicos, that uses your armor scraps, because in the other one to arm your palicos you had to defeat the monsters and use the same materials that you used to develop your armor and weapons. You have to use that same stuff to create the palicos one. Now, when you create your arms and weapons, it creates scraps. So leftover materials create the scraps, and then you use the scraps to create theirs, which is nice because then you don't have to go and defeat the monster like 20,000 times because you created what you wanted and it created scraps for your palico or whatever for your palamate, and you're like, okay, cool, I'll go ahead and create that for them since I have these leftovers.
And you can intentionally create scrap too. You don't have to just wait for you to craft something. If you need to make something for that palico or palamute, you're like, I'm never going to use that monster's materials for my own armor. You can make stuff for them. You can turn it into scrap and they'll use it.
Yeah, I'm really excited to see what they do in their next one, listening to everything, because if they take what everybody's praising on both of these and do something with it on the third iteration, it's going to be awesome. I've loved everything about the thing. I mean, my biggest drawback is just familiarizing myself to the controller. A is over here. It's not over here on the damn thing. Biggest issue. And then when we went and played something else later, I couldn't even get into the dang menu because I kept backing out because I kept hitting B instead of A. And I was using some severe language at the controller. My wife was freaking out. She thought I was mad. It was really frustrating at first. Once we got into it, it became, very familiar. But holy crap, switching back and forth to Xbox to Switch that was just annoying.
Yeah, that's the
So
biggest one right there.
I want
right?
that fixed
because they basically flip flopped A and B. A and B are complete opposites on the Xbox and the Switch, and then even with the PlayStation, when you consider it's X and O.
Triangle.
It's only X and O. X is where the A is
X,
on the Xbox, and it's like, okay, so those are my activate abilities or my primary abilities. But in the Switch, that's B button down there, and that's the get out, cancel everything. So when I first got back into Switch, I don't know how many missions I canceled and stuff because I was trying to do something. And then when I went back to the Xbox, I'm like, I cannot get into my menu because I keep pushing B and backing out of the menu. So it's just to get used to that they did that. I don't know why they did that. Who cares? I mean, I don't know. Maybe there's some type of patent or something, but they should have called them something else. If they didn't want to call them A and B, they could have called it Mario and Luigi. I don't know, M and L. I don't know, but
yeah. And they didn't even have to go with A and B. They could have just said B as your action button, because that's where your action button physically is on all the other controllers, is right there on the bottom. Hit that one. That's your action button. That's your other button. That's just freaking annoying. That was my only downfall of playing the game, is just familiarizing my hands to go in the wrong places. And then boom, you go back to an Xbox or PlayStation, you got to do it all over again.
right.
So fix the controller and it's perfect.
they've added so much new stuff to this, and one of the new things that I really do like, and we haven't touched upon yet, is the endemic life stuff. They had endemic life in World, but they've changed it. They've got like songbirds that can give you everything. Gives you I shouldn't say everything, but like songbirds and all these different insects. They give you buffs for the duration of the time you're running around that area, which was really cool because you could basically max out things like your attack and your defense and stuff like that by getting these songbirds. They're different colors, so you know what they are when you run into them, and you get a maximum of certain things every time. Then they have these butterflies that give you that when you hit them, they poof of dust and they give you increased attack and increased defense, and it's pretty cool, the stuff that they've done. But overall, I love the game and I couldn't get enough of it. I mean, we played it up until yesterday. What I did, I will agree with Nick. The single player was extremely short because I didn't think we were anywhere near the finish, and then Nick sent us a screenshot of his credits, and I'm like, he wasn't that much further than I was, and I got to play, and I'm like, oh, well, yeah, we're so it was really short. I mean, basically, once you get to it's not a very high rank neither in the single player story. It's the end of the story, and you're just going on and continue fighting monsters at that point. So that was pretty interesting. And then, Shane and Russ, did you guys get to do the rampages? Because that was something new for this one that was kind of fun.
I did not make it there yet. I have not.
Shane, did you get to do any of the rampages?
My Switch died.
You missed out on that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. I seen something on those rampages, and I was actually going to ask you guys if you got to them yet. This is, I think, Saturday. And I was like, man, it looks pretty cool. But nope. I didn't get to. And
we were wanting to do a 4-player rampage because I bet that gets insane to do a 4-player rampage. Because you basically, I think, Nick, you put it the best when you and I were talking about it. You said it was like a tower defense type game. Because it is pretty cool. You build up defenses, and the monsters try to break through all the gates to get to the main gate, and your object is to keep them out of the city. And so you're setting up defenses, calling on heroes, you're fighting monsters in this giant like maze type stuff and arena. So it's kind of cool. Definitely was an interesting change and a new concept. It was kind of what would I forget the term they used in World, but basically in World you had I don't even remember what they called it now, but you had the events where the giant one that you were trying to fight off towards the end was just making it in certain aspects on its march to the area, and you were blocking its path. In this one, you're basically just trying to keep the monsters out of the town.
Yeah, those are pretty cool events too, because after you're shooting the cannons and everything at it, trying to slow it down, you end up on its back having to do sequential events and beat the crap out of it to try to stop it. That was pretty cool. So I really want to check out this Rampage stuff, but we'll have to see what happens.
Yeah, the
Is there?
world stuff was pretty cool with that monster. The rampages are pretty cool. Like Pat said, they're kind of like tower defense mechanics. It's basically you have these uh, little areas along the path, like I said, it's like a maze that you can set out either manual shooters, so where you take control of the item, either a ballista or a cannon or something like that, or you have ones that are automated, so that the people of the town take over these little cannons and stuff like that, and they shoot the monsters, and you can put down, on the ground, you can put down dynamite, little things that respawn every time and blow up, or you can call in some of the main characters, like Fujin, I think, which is the main guy of the town, and like the chefs and various other things that come in and like rip through the monsters and stuff. And you just get a ton of monsters that come through at one time. You have like 3 or 4 monsters that come in, and you got to basically just defend that area and hope they don't make it to the main gate. Some of them will sprint for the main gate, some of them sit up front. And so you got to really strategically think about how you're going to set up your different, cannons and various things like that to make the most out of when those monsters come in. And it's a lot of fun, especially like Patrick was saying. I was hoping, me and Pat did it together, and the first one we started it right away because we were confused, thinking that would start us into the area so we could prep. But no, that just started it where the monsters started coming. We had nothing out, and so we had to hurry up and start putting stuff out. But we soon figured out that was the reason. But I think a 4-player rampage would be a lot of fun to see us all. I mean, I bet you there's a ton of monsters that come in, and it's all just strategically think about how we're going to place various things around the maze to contain the monsters from coming further. So it's a really cool aspect.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It was fun. Yeah. That goes back to that whole statement that I made earlier, where Nick and I were in such a huge hurry that we made it to the village and decided to play co-op together instead of running through the story. So we made everything 100 times harder on ourselves than we really needed to. Because, like I said, Nick came back the next day and he's like, "Dude, we should have did the village quest because it explained everything that we were cussing about." So
Yeah, you got to take your time. Don't
we
rush.
just wanted to get in there and play together and kill some monsters together.
Oh yeah. Yeah, that's the biggest killer for so many co-op games. You got to spend 2 hours playing single portions just to be able to play with each other. And
Yeah.
that's the games like this. You don't want to play 2 hours by yourself. You want to jump in with your friend and
That's
slay
because
dragons.
Monster Hunter has some of the best, not the greatest, but definitely some of the best co-op in it. Just fighting the monsters as a group is a ton of fun. And we had it in Monster Hunter World, and this one's the same thing. Like, it's just a ton of fun to go after the monsters together as a group. It's just a lot of fun.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's like I said, you and I hopped in just so we can get, 6, so we can get, like, I think we put 4 to 6 hours that first night together so we can play through all of the stuff. It was great. I don't know, man. But like I said, we made it harder on ourselves because we didn't do all the village quests, because as soon as I learned about the wire bugs, in my opinion, it almost became easy mode because,
For sure.
they allow so many cool quick skills, even like quick escapes. When the monster's knocking you straight forward and he's doing a charge to ramp up at you, you can use the wire bug to do a quick escape.
Well,
bounce the
and
other
this one
direction.
has the switch skills that are really awesome. So,
Mhm.
like in the other one, you had, in World, you had set combos and stuff. In this one, with your wire bugs, you can do certain combos and certain moves. And as you progress in the game, you unlock new ones. So you can swap them out. There's actually 2. You can swap out when you unsheath your sword or whatever it is that you have. Will have its own sort of animation. Like my first one was when it unsheathed, it did a quick attack. Whereas my second one, when it unsheathed, it did a double attack that I could follow up from. And then my second one was I could do this like come in and hit him and do like a downward thrust on the monster. And then the second one I got where I basically just slice through him. But when I do it when it hits them, it does like 4 or 5 or 6. I think like up to 6 additional hits. So it's almost like, those quick samurai, like, unsheath and put this, take the sword out, and put it right back in real quick. Those like memes, it was kind of like that. That's kind of what my character does, but it goes through them. And then when it does like six like that on the monster. So it's really awesome. And it's really awesome to unlock those. Like, oh, I got a new one. It's just like, I really want to check this out because I want to see what it does. And unlocking them, they don't tell you how to unlock them. You just kind of progress through the game, and then you get a new one. You're like, oh, sweet, I got a new, skill. I want to go check this out and equip it and see what it does.
Right, yeah, because they break them into two. You get silk bind abilities, you get silk bind attacks, and switch skills. And they're just a little bit different for each one. And the silk bind allows you to bind the creature in silk, as it says. So when he goes into a down state, he can be mounted. So you use those a lot to wrap the creature in silk so that when he gets bound up, you can mount him and get on top of him. And then the switch skills are just kind of additional abilities that you can swap in and out. I think you get two or three of each. I can't remember. I think I got 3 silk binds, and only like 2 different switch skills, and you can swap out between them. So it's definitely got a lot going for it. There's a lot to get lost in. I mean, I'm sure there's stuff I'm missing, even putting as much time into it as I am. And even Nick has even put more time into it than I have because he's gotten a lot further. He's gotten to the way higher, the monsters.
The Apex.
Yeah, there you go. You got the Apex, and I haven't gotten to those yet in the single player. So, we played a lot together just trying to get armor and weapons and everything. So I don't know, man. There's so much to this game. After playing it for a little over a week, I still feel like I'm missing so much to it, and I want to play more.
Just like World, it's a lot of little stuff in there. A lot. I mean, I think on my skill tree for my insect glaive, there's probably 100 plus I never upgraded to or changed off on. So.
Oh yeah, the weapon and armor trees are insanely huge. They're massive, just like they were in World.
Yeah, it gives you that ability again to customize weapons for creatures and stuff like that. It's good stuff. It's good stuff. I mean, this is yet another Capcom game, or at least Monster Hunter game, where I think the price point is very good. It's well worth what it is on the Switch. I think what was it, 50 or
60?
Or 60. I can't remember. It's 60 on, yeah. So yeah, I'd say that's perfect. I mean, I think with the level of stuff, the amount of like the stuff that's Patrick and Nick have been talking about, because I can't very well talk about some of those things because I haven't quite experienced every bit of it. But with all those things, I mean, that is a full game. I think that's the definition of a full game, in my opinion.
Oh yeah, definitely a good game. It's worth $60 for me. I mean, I've gotten more than $60 worth of content out of it already, and I don't feel like I'm done with it. Not in a long shot right now.
I paid $75,
and now you can't even play it.
Now I can't even play it.
No, I would agree.
My
I think it's
Palamute
worth
looks so
60.
Cute.
There's like Pat and Russ said, there's a ton to this game. I mean, there's so much. When you think you're like, okay, I think I've unlocked everything. No, something else new comes along. I mean, it's just like this game. The progression in this game is fantastic. I think that's one of the things that make Monster Hunter great, is that it spaces things out so great that when you feel like you've kind of hit the apex, it unlocks something else. Right, and then you're like, oh, well, now I got to strive for that. And then as you get to the point of the high on that, it unlocks something else. And so you just continually, you're like, oh, I got to keep playing. And I played it today, and again, and I got up to the apex predators, about to start fighting those, and it, just like Pat said, I don't feel I'll probably be playing it for several weeks or months ahead. Just like World. I mean, we played a ton of World, all through the Monster Hunter World main campaign, and then I know me and Patrick played a ton of the Iceborne expansion DLC. I think, did we finish it? I can't remember if we finished it or not.
Yeah, I think we wrapped that
Yeah,
one up.
you finished it because then you guided me through it too.
Yeah, we finished that one up, and Monster Hunter World was fantastic, and I love it. And it's this game is going to be the same way. There's just going to be so much, and even if there's not a story, and if they don't add much to the story, just fighting the monsters alone is a ton of fun on its own.
Well, yeah, You already
got to
saved
put
the
strategy
village.
in it. Well, yeah. I mean, you got to put strategy into your hunts, right? You
Yeah.
can't just go out there and willy nilly just start attacking it because you get your butt kicked. So you got to realize what you're going to take with you, what dongo you're going to eat, what food you're going to eat. If it's a electricity, a lightning or thunder monster, then maybe you want to eat the thunder resistant dongo, to get, or water resistant or fire resistant or whatever. If you need to sharpen your blade faster, maybe you eat the dongo that sharpens your blade quicker. Stuff like that. So you really got to think about what type of food you're going to eat, what things you're going to take with you, because whatever you take with you out of your item box is what you're going to have with you. So do I need potions? Do I need mega potions? Do I need ancient potions? Like all these different, there's so many materials and things to craft and potions. And am I going to kill the monster or am I going to capture it? Because you can capture them. So, what traps do I need? Do I have trank bombs on me? Because you have to use trank bombs to put the monsters to sleep so you can take them back to the camp. Do I have those on me? Do I need to buy more for the merchant? Whatever the case may be, there's a lot to go into your thought process as to far as how you're going to go about each hunt. Because depending on whether you kill or capture a monster also depends on what items they drop. Typically you have a higher percentage of drops if you capture them versus killing it. So you got to kind of look at that. There's notes the game takes, which is really great, which tells you what items the monster drops and what their percentages are, depending on, maybe you need a tail. Well, if you want to get a higher percentage of the tail, you need to lop the tail off, right? So then you're like, okay, I need to go in and focus on the tail because I need to chop that thing off so I can get the piece I need. So, yeah, there's a lot of strategy that goes in, a lot of thought that goes into the game when you're going to take these different hunts. So,
Right.
and I think that's one of the fun parts of it.
Right, and then the more rare piece, they're lower drop, but then they get higher because then you get high rank. You can fight the same monster as a high rank, and that's what you're getting into, right? The apex is the high rank monsters.
Right.
Yeah, so basically it's the same monsters as below, but they're high rank, which means they hit harder, they move faster, they do their abilities more often. Which I can only imagine Magnamalo. He was a pain in the butt. I can only imagine him being a high rank monster.
You know what I don't want to fight high rank is that Zingor, the
Is he
lightning.
the lightning one? Yeah.
Yeah, that guy. I mean, even that guy in low rank, he is a pain in the butt.
All right.
Jeez, he jumps all over the place. Just like in World, he reminds me of that red one.
Oh, the Vol, the one that made you bleed.
Yeah.
On that. Yeah.
How that guy jumped around all the time and he could never sit still. That's exactly how this guy is, all over the place.
Yep. Yeah, and I don't know if you ran into it yet or not. Like I said, I haven't hit the elite stuff, the monsters yet. But going back to kind of how this feels easier, I didn't have to ever swap out my weapons. Like in the original Monster Hunter world, even at the low rank monsters, I felt like if I was going against a creature who was weak to sleep, I would get a sleep weapon or a poison weapon. And in Rise, I stuck with the same 3 weapons up until, like I said, I haven't hit the high rank monsters yet, but I played with a couple of the Rock Crusher weapons the Warhammer, Warhammer 1 and Warhammer 2. And then when I killed the Magnamalo, I built the Magnamalo Demolisher, the giant nasty one that does blast damage. And I used the crap out of that. I'm still using that one till now, even on monsters that are strong against blast damage. It still does so much damage I can kill them.
Yeah,
that's odd because I've got like 8 different weapons, or probably about 8 for World. So and I've only got 1 so far for this one.
Yeah, and this one I use the same weapon too. In World, I feel like I need, because in World, exactly what you said, Shane, I had different sets. I had like the Thunder set, the Water set, the Fire set, different sets depending on what we're going to fight. The only monster so far that I found that elemental, because your weapons can have elemental damage, the only one that I found that seems to really make a difference is the Magnamalo guy. I felt like when I used my water longsword, it did more damage than the one I was using for every other type of monster. Because I tried it, because we had failed the first time fighting him, and that was in the hub match, which they're a lot harder than that. And so I switched off of that and changed to my normal weapon, and it did less damage than my water-based weapon. So I felt like the elementals definitely came into effect with that. I think with the Apex, it's probably going to come in more. But ultimately, I feel like the hub. So they have their village quests, which are the single player portion, and they have the hub quest, which is the multiplayer portion. This game really relies on that multiplayer portion to advance you to a higher level, and those monsters are hard. Me and Pat have been fighting them, and what Pat found is basically the game doesn't care when you're playing multiplayer. It sets the monster up as a 4-player monster, and regardless if you're playing with 2 people or 3 people, it's a 4-player monster. So, we fought Magnamello like what 4 times before
It
he
was
killed
something.
him.
Yeah, it was insane.
Yeah, and later found out that it doesn't scale it. If you're playing multiplayer, it thinks, okay, you're 4 players and it's a 4-player monster, so they have high damage, high HP, and you're going after it. So, yeah, it was tough. We beat them, but man, it took us quite a while.
Yeah, we died quite a few times and almost gave up on him the last try of the night. Yeah. So yeah, there's so much to this game. I mean, we could probably talk for another hour on the new features and functions of this game and the stuff they've added. But I think honestly, if you like Monster Hunter World, you're gonna love Rise because it's the same formula, but just and I keep saying it. Maybe nobody else feels this way, but I feel it's easier, so it's simplified. And Nick has kind of mentioned that it's more accessible, and I think that the single player is definitely more accessible than World was because World single player was still difficult. In this one, there's only like 2 monsters that have actually fainted me even once in the single player campaign. For the most part, the single player monsters never faint me, so it's I never even have to redo them. So I definitely if you love World, this one's definitely in your wheelhouse. You should play it. And it sucks that it's only on Switch, but it is what it is, and it'll be coming to PC sometime in 2022. I think is what they were saying, Q1, Q2. But that'll be about it. Give it a shot. What else you guys think? Like I said, I think it's a well worth the $60 buy, and for me, it's a buy and play at full price.
I agree absolutely. Wish I would have got to play a little bit more. I wish I would have taken some time to play a little bit more, but these games never seem to fail. So definitely this is in that same boat of a great game to give an opportunity to.
Absolutely, $60 game.
Was it worth 75, Shane?
It was well worth 75 that I got to play. Hopefully, my Switch I can fix so I can get the other $65 out of my damn game. But here's a bonus review for you guys: Monster Hunter the movie. Here's my 5-second review. Shoot me in the head. That was a piece of crap. Even Mila Jovovich is like, I got to divorce my husband. He's awful. Oh my God, it was just terrible. Game is great though. Love the game. Movie is, it's an abortion to the eyes. It's terrible.
So avoid the movie and play the game. Yeah.
Dang straight.
My brother watched the movie. He said, yeah, it's horrible as well. But he's not a big gamer, but still. Yeah, I would agree. It's a $60. The $60 price point is well worth it. It's well worth getting if you own a Switch and you like Monster Hunter. Maybe this is your first time. This is definitely, I think, kind of like Patrick was alluding to. I think this is the most accessible version, whereas the single player is pretty easy to get through and pretty easy to have fun with. And I think you'll find, if this is your first Monster Hunter game, I think you'll find this to be easy to use and easy to access and a lot of fun and kind of get you into that world of Monster Hunter and start, I think once you get into there, you'll be like, what are these other Monster Hunter titles? That's kind of like how we were, I've always known about Monster Hunter. I think we all have, but I think the first one that we really got into was Monster Hunter World. And from there, we were kind of hooked on the idea. And so, we're waiting for that next big console release, because they do have them out on the 3DS and stuff. And like I said, they do have some older console versions, but they're mainly ports of the handheld versions. But I like these full console releases of Monster Hunter, and I hope they continue down that road because I think Capcom This franchise has been around for a long time, but I think they really made their stride with Monster Hunter World, and they're keeping that stride going with Rise, and I want to continue to see that stride going. Hopefully, the next iteration will be on all the major consoles and not just the Switch. So I'm looking forward to it.
Yep, cool. Anybody else got anything else they want to add to this one before we put it to bed?
Nope. Get
Buy
the
it
pillow
now.
and blanket. It's done.
All right. Well, Shane's got to finish eating up his Bunny Dongo plate. And after that, well, we're heading out. Everybody, hope you enjoyed this episode. We hope to catch you in the next one.
See ya.